Hello, subscribers to Substack. It's been a little while since we've had a live interview and video, and this is Hugh Smiley, and you're very welcome once again to be with us here to learn something, and with your comments, of course, maybe to provide some uh, opinions or questions, commentary, so that we can create a little bit of a community of ideas and experience also. So coming from the head, information, knowledge, but also from the heart and the body itself and the spirit too. So full spectrum. So I'm sort of excited today, more than usual perhaps, to have a very special guest, Itamar Avneri from Israel, direct from Jaffa. Is that
From
where
Tel
you?
Aviv.
You're from Tel Aviv. Okay. Yeah. So a few weeks ago, on the 24th of April, organization called Standing Together uh, had an event at the Central Library in Toronto, which I attended with my friend Yaakov, who's originally from Israel. And Itamar was one of the keynote speakers. And so we made contact briefly there, and you very kindly agreed to be interviewed for the Substack channel. So welcome, Itamar.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, how are you
Hello,
today?
everybody from Tel Aviv.
Yeah, that's great. Well, so many people on this side of the pond, in Canada at least, we see the news and we hear about Israel and we hear about Gaza and we hear about Palestine and the Middle East, but a lot of people don't really have much of a direct connection unless
Mhm.
perhaps they are Israeli or Jewish, the diaspora, or Arab or Palestinian. But many Canadians just sort of see this situation unwinding from afar. And I know ever since I was about 14 years old, I used to come home from high school and read the newspaper from one of the big Toronto newspapers from cover to cover. But I was always really interested in Israel and Palestine, and for some reason, I don't know why, but I was just very attracted to knowing what was going on there. And so I've been sort of following assiduously all these years. I'm 78 now almost, and I'm still very, very interested because, in a way, Israel or Palestine, however we want to call it, is sort of the eye or the heart of the world. When you think of the three major continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, as far as population goes, they all come together in that little tiny spot. So, in the body of the world, uh, if the heart is not healthy, then the whole body suffers. So, it's really important in more ways than one um, that we find a way for there to be peace and coexistence there. So anyway, I would just like to, without asking a lot of questions, I have a few in my back pocket, but I would love you just to share a little bit about what your activities are, the basic vision of your organization, and some of your activities, and specifically what's been going on for the last couple of days in Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me, and also thank you for caring. We've met in Toronto. After that, me and Angela, she's another partner of mine from the National Leadership of Standing Together. We moved to Montreal and then to Chicago, and we met a lot of people who feel deeply about the situation in Israel, Palestine, and care deeply about the lives of people here. And it makes us stronger to know that a lot of people do believe in peace and do care about us. And it's very important for us. So, first of all, thank you. Um, Regarding standing together in Arabic, it's nakef in Hebrew, it's omdim beyachad.
Mm.
We are the largest grassroots movement right now operating in Israel. Standing Together is a joint Palestinian Jewish movement working within Israel. So we are all Israeli citizens. For those who do not know, there are 2 million Palestinians who are citizens of Israel. 20, even bit more, 20% of the Israeli
Right.
population.
Yeah.
And our vision, our objective is to create a new majority inside our society, inside the Israeli society, a majority that would have enough political power and political will to demand and achieve what we believe we all deserve, which is a just peace. That means that we have to end not only this horrible war and attack on Gaza and its people and achieve a ceasefire, we have to lift the siege over Gaza. We have to end the occupation and achieve a just peace that would ensure the independence and the safety and the dignity and the historic justice of everybody on the land. This is one objective, but we also fighting for social and environmental justice and equality within Israel, within the Israeli borders and the Israeli society. As I said, Standing Together is the biggest grassroots movement currently in Israel. We have 14 local chapters all around the country and 11 student chapters in universities
Mm.
in Israel, and we have more than 6,000 members right now in the
Mhm.
movement.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So this is later. I'll put the URL, the website link below the video so people can get in touch with the organization.
That would be
And
amazing.
of course, I know there's a place where you can contribute. I'm
You can
sure you need.
contribute, and actually, you can also become a friend of Standing Together. There
Right.
are chapters of Friends of Standing Together all
Yeah.
around the world, and also
Yes.
in Canada, in Toronto, in
Yeah.
Montreal, in
Yeah.
Vancouver, and
I
you can
I
join.
I think I will join. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, you should.
it's a cause I really believe in, and my friend Yakov too. He was so emotional. His grandfather was actually murdered in a terrorist attack in Hebron back in the 1930s. But
Wow.
when he was still living in Israel, excuse me, in
Mhm.
the in the Haifa area, he used to visit friends who are Arab in Akka, and was has been working for authentic dialogue and good communication between Israelis and Palestinians, both in Israel, and he's wanting to again dip his toes into this area, so he will probably be a member as well. So I've had a vision that the two-state solution, although many people, it's a nice sounding phrase, the two-state solution. It has a nice rhythm to it. People say, "Oh yeah, that's what's needed," but it seems so almost impossible at this stage of the game. Um, I've always thought that having one state, which is a civic society like Canada or Belgium, where every citizen has equal rights before the law, and there's no special privileges for Jewish or Arab or Muslim or Christian or anybody, but everybody's equal, and there's a guarantee of some kind that happens. Even have a name for it. I came up with
Well,
Palesreal.
no, Palestine.
Palesreal, Pal, so they can be pals, the Arabs and the Jews, and then almost Israel is in there, and the Palesreal, something like that. But it doesn't matter the name so much. But is there any hope of that happening in our lifetime,
So
or
first of all,
or the two-state solution?
so first of all, yes, there is hope for peace. And when I'm saying peace, at least for me as a community organizer, and also for the movement, for Standing Together, we do not, I mean, we do care, but in a way, we do not really care about the specific formula. There's no lack of formulas. We can speak about the two-state solution, one-state solution, a confederation, a federation, three-state solution, one and a half state solutions. There are a lot of formulas, and
Yes.
they are all achievable. They're all possible.
Okay.
The real problem is political will. If you ask Palestinians and Israelis right now, and I'm saying it according to polls and surveys that were made after October 7, the majority of the people in Palestine, in the occupied territories, and also the majority of people inside Israel still support a two-state solution.
Hmm.
The problem is that majority of both societies do not believe it's possible. So our job is not to find the right formula. Our job is to convince our society that peace is possible if we'll demand it. It's not a question of yes, it's not a yes no question, it's a how question. So for us, the task is again to build a new majority inside Israel that is powerful enough to tell our leaders, we demand you to negotiate a peace agreement with the leaders of Palestine, with the Palestinians leaders. And as a movement, we would support any kind of solution, whether it would be a two-state solution or a one-state solution, or again, what have you, as long as the fundamentals of the idea of peace, justice, independence, sovereignty, safety, and everything would be ensured. So,
Hmm.
in a way, for me, it's not about the formulas, it's about the will. And if it's about the will, it's about the people, right? And I believe people can be horrible. I mean, look at what our government is doing, under my name. I don't want anybody to think that I think I'm not responsible. We are all responsible. But look at what our government is doing in Gaza and also in the West Bank right now. It's horrible. But
Yeah.
people can also be amazing and brave.
Hmm.
And there were so many situations in history when people thought that change is impossible, and then change happened. And it happened because of people. If you're thinking about the apartheid regime in South Africa and Nelson Mandela, if you're thinking about um, women rights to vote, if you're thinking about the LGBTQ community all around the world, which is under attack right now, of course, and also women. But still, we achieved so many victories in history. So of course, it's possible also here. Absolutely.
Exactly. It's like in
And
nature, there are processes in nature that we don't see. Even the scientists who have all the most technologically advanced instruments, they don't see it coming. It could be a tsunami or a volcano or a shift in the tectonic plates of the Earth, but it's happening. It's just
Mhm.
not visible. So, and then there's that hundredth monkey. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I don't
It,
think so, no.
okay, well, anyway, it's a process where a certain number of monkeys on an island in the Pacific started to wash their coconuts,
Hmm.
and then others start, and then when it reached about 100, then not only did all the monkeys start to wash their coconuts before eating, but even on other islands that had no
Oh,
contact
wow.
with those monkeys. So there was a kind of like the Jungian collective consciousness. Something just happens everywhere at the same time. So there may
Oh,
be,
amazing.
even though your numbers are only 6,000, which is a drop in the ocean of the population there, but there could be thousands more, hundreds of thousands, who are maybe hearing some of your broadcasts or attending one of your events and starting to think about the possibility that Jews, for example, thinking, well, maybe the Arabs aren't all terrorists and dangerous and hateful. Maybe I have a second opinion, give them a chance.
And you know what?
Yeah.
There do exist, and we already know them. Let me share with you and for the people who watch us or listen to us.
Okay.
On the day on October 7, we had less than 2,000 members. We had only four chapters in universities. And everybody around us thought that this is the end of standing together.
Mm.
Jews and Palestinians won't be able to work
Ah,
together,
right.
but we only grew.
Yeah.
And there are 6,000 paying members, but there are many, many more who participate in our protests or in protests all around Israel. And so we only grew. And our social medias are the biggest in Israel, more than any other. We're not a party, but more than all the parties, including the Likud party, who's in power.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that we already won, because of course we do. We're still in the opposition
Yeah.
and we still have to fight. But I do believe we are on our way. I'm I can't promise anything. I can't promise everybody who's watching us that we are going to win, but I can promise you that there is real chance that we will win if we work in the right way. And it's hard to speak about that because I'm sitting in Tel Aviv, and now we're from here in Gaza. People are being massacred right now. So I'm saying that we are on the way for a win, for a victory, but it's not saving people and children right now. So in a way, it's very hard, and I'm listening to myself, and I hate it. But then again, the only time we have is now, and I do believe that we do have the power and that we found the right tools in
Hmm.
order to change our society and to
Hmm.
persuade more people in our society. We are trying to do it as fast as we can, of course, and that's why our first demand is not peace. Our first demand is a ceasefire and hostage deal in order to save lives. Um, but there is hope. There is still hope, and I think that during this horrible year and a half, I mean, the bleakest, darkest year and a half in my life and in many other people's life all around here, there is still some lights.
Yes.
Maybe not the light at the end of the tunnel yet.
Ah.
I hope so. I don't know, but maybe. But there is some light and there is
Mhm.
some hope yet.
Well, I can really see in you. I don't want to overly flatter you. I tend to do that sometimes, but
Oh, please continue.
please, okay, you don't mind. But I can see in you, not only conviction, but really an authentic connection with your vision and what you believe. And it's so encouraging to hear you talk with the tone of your voice and the words that you're choosing to use as a beacon of hope, because we don't hear a lot of these voices. We hear
Yeah, I know.
either ultra right, almost fascist kinds of authoritarian voices. This is the way it is, or we have the negativity on the part of many of the Arab people of hopelessness and sadness and just impotence, not knowing what to do. Because
And anger.
I have both some Palestinian friends as well as Jewish and Israeli friends here. So a question I have, and I just wanted to mention, I'm a Baha'i, and in the Baha'i writings, Baha'u'llah says something like, this is roughly paraphrased, but one soul can change the spiritual future of a whole continent. So do not despair in the fewness of your numbers. Um, so,
You should visit Haifa.
yeah, I
You
have.
ever been?
I've been twice on
Okay,
pilgrimage.
yeah,
Once in 1974, just after the War of '73, and then
yeah.
also about 2012. So I
Okay.
hope to go one more time before I die, before I croak. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place, the Baha'i World Center. But anyway, the fewness of your numbers. The I guess I'm curious also about the media and how much real exposure you get, because I know there's a lot of censorship, just as there is in North America, but probably even more in Israel, given the fact that there's a war going on. Well, it's called a war, a genocide perhaps is a more accurate term, or ethnic cleansing at the very least. But how much do ordinary Israelis actually, through the mainstream media there, hear about alternate voices like your own?
Not enough. Not
Hmm.
enough. First of all, there's a censorship about what's going on in Gaza. Less than before, of course, and people do know about the humanitarian crisis and the starvation right now, and
Okay.
people do know about about the number of children, 18,000 children um, who are murdered. I mean, again, I hate this word, but I have to say this word, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
truth. And so people do start to listen, or at least, the media is starting to talk about it a little bit more and more, but not enough yet. So
Hmm.
in Israel, if you'll ask someone on the street, maybe they heard about the starvation, maybe not. And
Hmm.
if they heard about the starvation, there is still a chance they will tell you that that's a lie.
No.
Because in the Israeli media, usually what they'll say is that the Palestinians are saying there is starvation. So people hear about the starvation, but they also hear that, maybe it's true, maybe it's not, maybe it's a lie, maybe it's a propaganda. And for Israelis, of course, and we can understand the reasons, even if we do not agree, it's very hard to believe in those things. People do not want to believe.
Yes.
That
Uh-huh.
makes sense, right?
Yes.
And also, people also in Israel are still afraid and still traumatized from October 7, and also, of
Of
course,
course. Of course.
also from before. So it is hard, but people do start to hear about that, and also people knows more and more about voices like ours. Sometimes we have a huge demonstrations and nobody's talking about that. So
Mhm.
on the day that we've met in Toronto, exactly in the same hour, it was already evening in Tel Aviv, and we had a demonstration.
Ah.
And the headline was to stop the war and the killing in Gaza. And 10,000 people came to this demonstration. It's a huge demonstration, right? It's quite big. And no one spoke about it in the Israeli media, not at all. It was a shock for us, even. But on the other hand, 3 days ago, today it's Tuesday, 2 days ago, we had a demonstration at the Gaza border. We marched
Oh
from
yeah.
Sderot to the Gaza border. It was few hundreds people. We call on people to say, okay, leave everything behind and just come now to the Gaza envelope. And we are marching, and hundreds of people came.
Mm,
There was a lot of police brutality. There were arrests.
mm,
Alonli Green, he's a very good friend of mine, and also the national co-director of Standing Together. He was arrested, and 8 other people were arrested. And the media spoke about it a lot.
mm,
And of course, we don't want them to talk about us only when there's violence. But again, in a way, we are succeeding in breaking this kind of siege. It's also kind of a siege, right? It's a siege over Gaza, it's a siege
yes.
over ideas, and we are able to break
Mm,
this siege.
mhm.
And when the media is not talking about stuff, we're talking about stuff. I will give you one more example, and then you'll be able to ask your next question. But we wanted people to know and also to speak about the children in Gaza. So what we did, we stood all around the country and not only standing together with their pictures and their names. We did it in Jaffa and in Tel Aviv and in Haifa and Jerusalem and in many other cities.
Mm,
And then we had the big demonstration in Tel Aviv that I told you about. And the police told us, you can have a demonstration, but you're not allowed to show the pictures. So
mhm. Oh,
what we did the day after, day after they told us so, we bought all the signs on buses, on the bus stations in Tel Aviv and other cities, and we put the pictures of the
mm.
children because we wanted people to know. And of course, we also came with
Oh
the
yes.
pictures to the demonstration because we are not going to ask the police if we can stand with a picture. I mean, we're not going to agree to this silencing. So we are always trying to show our society what is being done in Gaza on our name
Hmm.
and to call our society to resist it, to refuse to do that.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to lie, many people still support the war. But if you're looking at surveys in Israel right now, the overwhelming majority of people do not support this war. The, we're talking about 80% of the people, okay? They do not support the war and they do not support the objectives of the war, which is they have is nothing with our safety, right? It's only about annexation and building the settlements again and transfer the Palestinians
Yes.
away.
Hmm.
And 80% of the people saying, no, we don't want that. We want a hostage deal and a ceasefire. And many of them, of course, are doing it not out of love for Palestinians. Many of them are doing that because they want to see the hostages
Oh
come
right.
back. But still, the outcome is the same
Yeah.
outcome. And so this is a good sign.
Hmm.
So again, many people do not know what's going on in Gaza. Many people do not want to know or do not want to believe in what's going on in Gaza. But things are starting to change also in Israeli
Well, that's
society.
encouraging.
And
Yeah.
now this is our challenge as a movement, but also as a society as a whole, not only to learn about those things, but to really stop
Hmm.
those things.
Hmm.
And this is our
Hmm.
task.
Well, there does seem to be a little bit of a sea change, a shift, even in the Western countries, which for the most part have been solidly behind the Israeli government, even though if a poll were taken, as you say in Israel, probably the majority of the people in Canada would say, stop this war. However, I think just yesterday the governments of Canada, the UK, and France wrote a letter to the Israeli government saying,
Yeah, good.
stop. So it's changing. Rather than 100% behind the ethnic cleansing, the project, the war, or whatever you want to call it, um, there's a little bit of on the governmental level, and mainstream media as well is starting to have
Yeah.
more voices, more alternate voices.
And that's absolutely a good thing. Personally, I have to say the international community has a role to play and they're doing it way too slow, of
Yeah.
course. But as we said also before about us, the only time we have is now. So it's very good that they're doing it right now.
Hmm.
And people in Israel do know this and do hear about that. And it's also helping us, to coalesce and to organize
Hmm.
our people and our society. I have to say, I still believe that the only people who can really stop what's going on, it's us, it's the people on the ground. Because even if your government and the French government and the government of the UK would say to Netanyahu, you have to stop, if the Israeli public would be behind Netanyahu, he will have no incentive to stop, right?
Right.
He will be able to continue. But it is extremely important, and I do believe that the governments around the world should do much more. And I also do believe, I don't know if they listen to your Substack, but maybe, who knows? I do believe that they have to do much more, and they have to be much harder with our government and to stop selling offensive arms to Israel, because they're using it right now to destroy Gaza, to send it back to the Stone Age. And those are their words, not my words.
Yeah.
But I also think that governments around the world should speak with the Israeli public directly. I mean, it's possible in this age of information,
It's
right?
true. Yeah.
And social medias. And those leaders should say to Israelis, listen, we are picking a fight with your government, but we're not doing it because we don't want you to be safe or secure or independent on or what have you. We're doing it out of solidarity with Palestinians, and we know that we have to save Palestinians right
Hmm.
now, and also out of solidarity with you. And there's no contradiction between the two, because your interests and the interests of the Palestinians are the same, to live in peace, and your government,
Hmm.
i.e., my government, the Israeli government, is blocking us from achieving this peace. And I believe that if the governments around the world would speak directly to us, it would help us also to resist and to bring more people into the fold.
So what would that look like? What form could that take? So let's say the Canadian government to speak directly to the people of Israel, not the
So,
government.
I don't know, and Mr. Carney can do whatever he wants, but I will give you an example. For it was a year ago, I think, when Kamala Harris was still vice president, and
Yeah.
Biden was still the president. And Kamala Harris said that she knows and the administration knows that the Israeli society is different from the Israeli government.
Uh,
And that went a long way in Israel. I was surprised. I saw in stories in Instagram people that I know, but they are not political, and they shared this statement and said, "Hell yeah, we are not like our government." And it helped a lot of people to
really?
understand that
Uh,
A, we're not like our
yeah.
government, but also B, that the world understand that we are not all like our government.
Yeah.
Of course, some people are
Mm.
exactly like our government, but we are not all like our government. And all we hear from our leaders is that criticism over Israel equals anti-Semitism.
Hmm.
There is anti-Semitism in the world, a lot, of
Of
course, and
course.
we have
Yeah.
to fight it.
Right.
Absolutely. But criticism over Israel or the Israeli policies or the Israeli government is not anti-Semitism.
No.
And so sometimes, again, there are anti-Semites who are also criticizing Israel, but it's perfectly
Sure.
valid to
Uh,
criticize every government
mhm.
and also the Israeli government.
But that's
And
used
so,
as a weaponization
absolutely,
of
absolutely. And you
honest
know,
criticism or dissent, you might say. It's used
absolutely.
weaponized
And it
to.
also, it hurts us or the struggle around the world to counter anti-Semitism,
Sure.
right? Because then all of a sudden it's not clear what's real anti-Semitism is
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
what's not. So when politicians like or world leaders like again Kamala Harris when she was vice president are saying, yes, we are criticizing the Israeli government, and we also know that the Israeli government and the Israeli people are different.
Hmm.
you know it makes the job of the Israeli government much harder to tell the public that this is anti-Semitism,
Exactly.
because the Israeli government, the Israeli public just heard
Hmm.
that no, we those are two different things. So it's very, very important.
We live in an age of such diversity. We have non-state actors like corporations or terrorist groups, for example, who really are acting as if they were nation states. So
Yeah.
this idea of unity and diversity at the same time, um, Baha'u'llah, to quote again, said that glory not in that you love your country, but rather that you love your kind, meaning mankind.
It's wonderful.
So if we feel that I'm a brother, a sister, an uncle, a cousin of everybody on this planet, whether they're Filipino or Jewish or Buddhist or Russian or whatever, then I would want to help them if they're my family rather than hurt them. So if we're coming from that place, then the identity that we start to have as Israeli or Canadian or uh, male or female or whatever, it becomes secondary. And so those kinds of, as you mentioned, Kamala Harris's comment can be very useful in helping to loosen up a little bit of the fixed identity that people have to a political party or ideology. So it's tricky being an activist. I am a little bit in my own gentle way, but I've never really gone out in the street very much. But because politics can be a very dirty and dangerous game, but you seem to be, your organization, keeping a nice clean line, not associating with specific political parties or getting into that kind of um, competitiveness, but really focusing on the positive. And they say that in social capital, like in material capital, it's money and finances, and social capital, it's trust, is the most important quality. So I guess that if you can get the trust of people in Israel to see that you are doing good work and that you're not out for yourselves, but for the greater good of both peoples, all peoples that live there in the Holy Land, as it's called sometimes, um, that more and more people say, I think they're doing good work. I'm going to go to one of their meetings, or and they'll start talking amongst themselves.
Yeah, we are trying. Of course, my language and way of thinking is much more political than the language you bring to the conversation. But
Yeah,
in a way, it's the same. I have friends and family members who do not agree with some of the things I am doing or saying. But because they know me and I know them, and because we have a lot of conversations,
right.
they know that I see myself
Hmm.
as a patriot of my society. What I'm doing is, in my way, in my view, patriotic, but I'm not a patriot of the Israeli state or the
Right.
Israeli government, but I'm of my society, of the
Uh-huh.
people.
Right.
And I think it's very, very important, because then if they understand that I'm doing what I'm doing, hey, also because of self-interest, I think that's the good thing for my life. And also I think that's the good thing for their lives. And I think there's no contradiction between my interest as Jewish or Israeli and the interest of someone in Gaza who's Palestinian. Maybe they do not agree with me, but they are not angry at me, and they are willing to listen. And we are trying to build this trust. And it's extremely important to build trust across communities and between communities, but also inside our community, right? Because they can also be our first allies, the people, our friends, our families, the people,
Hmm.
my neighbors, etc. And so yeah, it's very, very important. I completely agree with you. And it's interesting, you mentioned all the identities, and then to love the people and not such identity or this identity or I don't know what.
Right.
And I think I said it also at the peace conference in Toronto. But when we are traveling around the world, I don't really like to do it. I much prefer to be here on the ground, but sometimes I do travel. And it seems like that a lot of people do care. We also said it at the beginning.
Right.
And people want to pick a side. And maybe it's important to say that we do want people around the world to pick a side, not only the governments, we want the people to pick a side.
Uh-huh.
But we also want them to understand what the sides really are. Because in the media and politicians are telling everybody that the sides are as follow: all Israelis with Netanyahu against all Palestinians with Hamas. Those are not the real sides. The real
Hmm.
sides are warmongers on one side,
Yeah.
my fascist government. And again, I'm saying my government because even if I never voted for them and they probably don't really like me or standing together, they're still my government and I'm responsible. But
Sure.
this fascist government and Hamas, and maybe they're not working together. I mean, they're not cooperating, but they do feed from one another and feeding from one another. And Benjamin Netanyahu told us many years ago, Hamas is an asset. He wanted to keep Hamas in power. So they are on one side and they want to continue with this war. And the other side is the side of the people. The overwhelming majorities of both societies that are very different
Mm,
from one another, and our conditions and privileges are extremely different from one another. I mean,
mm.
I can speak with you here, relatively safe, of course. Sometimes there's a missile from Yemen, but relatively safe.
Yeah,
And people in Gaza are absolutely not safe right now, but we have the same interest, the interest of
yes.
living in peace and without
Mhm.
those borders and the military control and everything.
So,
And this is about the people. This is what I'm trying to say.
yes,
And people are all around the world should pick a side, and they should pick, of course, the side of the people. And they also have to understand, and I think that's important. Sometimes we're getting some comments on social media. You should go to Europe. They should do something like that. All the Palestinians should leave. All the Jews should leave. Here, back home in Israel, Palestine, the Holy Land, the unholy land, call it whatever you want, everybody understands that no one is going nowhere. There are approximately 7 million Palestinians and 7 million Jewish people on the land,
that's right.
and no one is going nowhere. We already understand it. It's time for the world to understand it and then support us.
So here's a hypothetical question. Suppose that down the road a little bit, this division, polarization within Israeli society, Jewish society, I'm talking about mostly, um,
Mhm.
that it leads to some kind of a civil war. Uh, Things like that do happen when people feel really strongly. And so, how would your organization figure into that constellation?
Oh, no,
I know
it's
you're tired. You
frightening.
mentioned you've been going hard, so you
No,
don't
no,
have
no,
to answer that
no, that's
question.
fine. That's fine. It's hard to answer because, it's frightening. B, I really hope it's not going to happen. And C, I don't really have a response because
Okay.
um, we never sat and said, okay, if there's a civil war, what is it that we should do?
Mm.
I, I mean, maybe it would happen. I don't know. You can foresee the future. I still want to say that I would be surprised if that happened. I mean, in a way, maybe we are already having a civil war, but maybe civil wars in the 21st century
More
would
in the
look
mind.
different than, before.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to be like the American Civil War, for example. I almost said, yeah, like your Civil War, and then I remembered it from Canada. But you're going to be annexed, so
All
um,
right, so it doesn't matter.
it's going to be your Civil War in the future. Um, in a way, we already have this kind of civil war because there are also, you know, there's a lot of violence from the police and also in the street sometimes in demonstrations, and the polarization is very, very hard. And the feeling in social media is that there is a civil war, but I still believe that the interests, the shared interest we have across communities would be powerful enough in order to not only prevent a civil war, because I don't want to come back to the status quo. Okay, I don't want just to prevent a civil war. I want to change my society really from
Mhm,
from the ground up. And I still believe that if we work correctly and with
mhm,
the right methods and with the right language and everything, and with the belief in people, which is extremely important, will be able to use those
mhm,
shared interests,
mhm,
sorry, across
mhm,
societies
mhm.
and identities to really change the way we live
So
here.
the war or the conflict is a good thing actually. Um, it
Sometimes.
can from differing opinions, the spark of truth can arise when there's a clash.
Yeah.
So in this age, influence and propaganda and social media are very, very important. In a way, we fight wars with words, which is sort of a higher, more subtle level. So at the same time as you and your organization and your colleagues are fighting this war with peaceful actions and words and good ideas, you have, as you say, an hour away, the most prime, uh, primitive kind of physical violence and Martian energy of tanks and bombs, and so which is horrendous. And at the same time, there's this kind of more elegant um, level of dialogue and discourse happening, hopefully influencing more minds and hearts and spirits even when it comes to that universal love of all mankind. That's almost a spiritual principle, really, upon which political principles can be based, hopefully, in the future. So we should wind down soon. I'd like to keep these fairly short so that people watch them, you know. Uh, Thank you so much. What about, like, personally? Do you have within your family? What do they think of what you're up to? Do they agree with you or support you, or have there been some divisions and or your friends, university friends, perhaps?
Yeah. Um, some of them do support, some of them members of Standing Together, some of them donate to Standing Together, some of them do not agree with me. Maybe I said it in Toronto. My mother, for example, she's not agreeing with me. She has her own personal story. It's not the time to share it, but she
Okay.
told me once, listen, for me, it's hard to believe that we'll ever achieve peace. She
Uh-huh.
wants peace. Of course, everybody, I mean, almost everybody really wants peace, right? But she's saying, for me, it's hard to believe that we'll ever achieve peace with Palestinians. So it's hard for me that you are doing what you're doing. And it is hard for her sometimes, maybe that I'm marching to the Gaza border. But she also told me, I do not believe we'll achieve peace, but I really hope that I'm wrong and you are right,
Uh-huh.
because I would want peace, of course, and I hope that you are right, and I hope you are going to prove me wrong. And I think this is a very important kind of conversation because, again, in the end, people can be horrible, but people could also be amazing,
Mm.
and we have to win their hearts and their souls. And it's a process with everybody.
Yeah.
And so it's also a process sometimes with my family members.
Right.
But I do think they are proud of me, again, even if they do not agree. And they all know that I'm doing what I'm doing out
Uh-huh.
of love to my people, to my
Yeah.
family, to my niece and nephews,
Yeah.
to them, and to everybody around me. And that brings us together, even if sometimes we argue, around the Shabbat table.
Sure, sure. Well, there's a coherence within you, and I'm sure within most of the people in your organization. So that example, teaching by example, it spreads out like a ripple, like a wave. So they bit by bit, they poco a poco, people start to see after 1 year, 2 years, that you're still there, getting even better at telling the truth and walking that path of social activism, and without getting mired in the political polarization too much. So you said you're probably a lot more political than I am, quite possible. Um,
I
what
meant in the language I
the
use,
language?
but
Okay, yeah, okay, right, yeah. So when you say you want people to choose a side, you're referring to the side of oppression and the policies of the Israeli government currently, and the side of freedom for all or human rights for all. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Right. Right.
and
Well.
justice for
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Well, I would love to in the future have you back again, perhaps with one of the other members, one of the Palestinian members of your team,
Absolutely, we would
because I
love
think
it.
people
Yeah,
would also be really impressed to see a real life Israeli Jew and a real life Palestinian from the occupied
yeah,
territories or
we do
Israel.
exist. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe Angela or well, who was the woman who began the talk in Toronto? I forget her name.
You're speaking about Amira from the
Yeah,
Third
Amira.
Narrative podcast. Yeah.
Perhaps
And
Amira.
if somebody's listening to us and it's the first time they're hearing about the Third Narrative podcast, you should look it up. It's amazing.
Yes. Uh huh. The podcast, you say?
Yeah, they have a podcast called the Third Narrative. It's a very, very good podcast. Very
Okay,
interesting.
great. Perhaps you could send me the
Um,
link and I'll put it under the video.
yeah, I will look it up.
Right.
Absolutely.
So you're exhausted, and there's a current crisis going on with a lot of your members in jail, basically, or arrested
They
temporarily.
are at house arrest right now. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, that'll pass, hopefully, and
hopefully.
until the next time. Thank you so much, Itamar. It's been a real pleasure listening to
Thank you
you
very
and
much. Thank you for
having a
having me.
dialogue with you. I feel more enlightened, and I'm sure our Substack subscribers will
Me
have
too.
enjoyed it too.
Me too.
Alrighty.
So thank you very much.
Okay. I'll just find
Okay.
the recording button. So until next time, shalom. Merci, gracias.
And salam.
Bye bye.
Merci.